as I say. Carolyn Glick's been in Israel for a number of years and has had some hard-hitting. She just sat down with Brent Noctegal last week, who subbed in on this program. So we're certainly grateful that she can join us again on short notice. Carolyn Glick, good to have you on today's show.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Maybe before we get into some of the big picture issues, which I know you'll have some really precious insights to bring to our attention, maybe just as an Israeli, I've lived there with my family over the summer of 2007 and then 2012 again, when we were working on some excavations there in Jerusalem. And it's a very small country compared to the United States, very small in geography, very small in population. And it always struck me that the friends that we made there in Israel, it just seemed like one big family. And maybe you could just give us a sense of the national mood as these last few days have played out.
You know, I've been living in Israel for 34 or 5 years, and I've been through many events in Israel that have unified the people in an extraordinary way. But I've never seen the kind of unity of purpose that we have today among the people of Israel. I mean, just, last week or whenever it was, when I sat down with Brent, we were talking about the discord in Israel, that we were really riven by internal strife for the past year in a way that we had never seen before, with the left in Israel simply not accepting the legitimacy of the elections last year because they lost them. And we had all kinds of things happen here that we had never seen before. Just, a week and a half ago, leftist agitators were trying to prevent Jews from praying on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, in Tel Aviv, and debating about whether Jews should be allowed to celebrate another holiday in public in Tel Aviv as well. And then this happened, and all of a sudden, the same population, highly of non-believers, of secular Jews in Tel Aviv. There was a report yesterday that I think really it told the tale of the unity, which is that, I mean, many tales, but this one struck me just because it was so remarkable. We've drafted 300,000 reservists, and now we're calling up another 360. This is the largest mobilization the IDF has ever had, and these restaurants, our son is drafted in emergency orders, and so he tells us about the quantities of food that are being donated. So in the top, the most chic restaurants in Tel Aviv that aren't kosher had rabbis come in and make their kitchens kosher so that they could prepare free food to all soldiers to eat. And this is something that nobody could have ever imagined this happening just a week and a half ago. But I think it's sort of a testament to how the whole country is now unified, because what the Hamas butchers, what these monsters, what these jihadists did to the Jews on Saturday was that they sort of touched the, a lot of times talk about the archaeological levels or whatever of the Jewish soul, and really they reached the foundational rock of Judaism, of the Jewish people, by doing what they did on Saturday, and they awoke a sense of belonging and of solidarity and of shared fate among people who maybe had not felt it for years, in the most profound way imaginable. And we're all unified in our understanding that the enemy that we face doesn't want to defeat us in war, doesn't want to humiliate. They want to annihilate us. They want to annihilate us. And what Barry White said was absolutely true. These are sadists. They are torturing the families of their victims, not only with that video that you mentioned about the grandmother being executed on her Facebook page in front of her family, but They have been calling up using the personal cell phones of their victims, both the murdered ones and the ones that they're holding hostage in Gaza, to call up their parents and their children and their husbands and wives and brag about how they're torturing and how they murdered and how they raped and how they're abusing their loved ones. I mean, this is something that, we've never seen. The Ministry of Education just had all Israeli school children take TikTok and Instagram apps off of their phones because Hamas is using them to flood these images in the faces of Israeli children of hostages. I mean, so this is something. The evil of what they did on Saturday, and the continuing evil of what they're doing today, shows us in Israel, and I would assume all good people of the world, that we've never seen evil of this kind, of this magnitude, of this depth, of this endless, bottomless pit of unimaginable bloodlust and sadism. And that's Hamas, and that's jihad. And all the people in the West, all the people in New York City and in Washington and in Tampa and in Chicago and in LA and so on, in cities all over America and throughout the Western world that are demonstrating on behalf of them, all of the congressmen and women who refuse to condemn them or stand with Israel, they're supporting genocide. They're supporting sadism. They're supporting beheading babies. They're supporting mass rape. That's what they're supporting, and they have to be called out for that because that's what they're doing.
Well, we've certainly done what we can to try to call them out these last two programs that we.
Yeah, you guys are amazing, and I want to thank you for that. And the more people who do that, the better. Because as Jake Tapper said, and as you say all the time on your shows, and your viewers understand, you can't be silenced in the face of this, and there has to be a reckoning with all of these people who have enabled and facilitated and legitimized Jew hatred for the past generation.
Yeah, we do emphasize just the point of courage and how important it is, and you just don't see it very much today, whether it's among the commentators or even in leadership. Just coming back to this point, you talk about the unity of purpose and how that the whole of Israel has really rallied around Benjamin Netanyahu's government and this action that they're going to be taking in Gaza. Could you give us some insights into, do you feel like that unity of purpose is going to, what do you think it will lead to as far as the invasion of Gaza is concerned?
Well, the first thing is that this evening, today, Prime Minister Netanyahu and former defense minister and one of the prominent heads of the political left, Benny Gantz, signed an agreement to form a national emergency government for the duration of the war. And so that was done largely because the public demanded it. And they're going to start working immediately. They've been putting together the plans for the invasion of Gaza. We have all of the men mustered ahead of the invasion and armed, and they've gone through their initial training to go to war. And so we expect it imminently.
So just to give us maybe some context, you would know the history better than any of us, but I think Israel pulls out of Gaza in 2005. And then maybe just summarize the events of the past, I guess that would be 18 years or so.
So Israel has done many foolish things on a strategic level over the past many years. In 1993, we started a fake peace process with the PLO under the delusion that Leopard will change its spots. The architect of modern terrorism, Yasser Arafat, who brought airline hijacking to the world and trained the Ayatollah's men, that he would somehow become a man of peace if we gave him more guns, gave him a base of operations inside of the land of Israel, and gave him international legitimacy and even a Nobel Peace Prize. And that was false. And we paid an enormous price for it. And rather than learning that lesson in 2005, the government of Israel under Ariel Sharon decided that the best thing to do to solve the problem of terrorism in Gaza is to walk away from Gaza and hand it over to the Palestinians. And lo and behold, as all of us who opposed it and said that this was an insane policy had warned, Gaza immediately turned into a terrorist base against Israel. It didn't become a flourishing Singapore that they promised us it would, because we wouldn't be there, and then they would have no reason to be angry, and they would put aside their guns and grow tomatoes or whatever. They blew up all of our greenhouses from our farmers who we expelled, and they turned all of Gaza into the Taliban ruled Afghanistan. And Hamas decided that it had enough with pretending that the PLO was in charge in 2007, and they just took over completely. And it's been run as a jihadist operating base against Israel ever since. And even during this period of Hamas rule, we've been telling ourselves stories about how Hamas was deterred, and that we had shown them a lesson, and that we could coexist with a jihadist regime at our doorstep. And of course, we were urged to do this by the international community, including the United States, over every single U.S. administration that pressured us not to take action when we were attacked repeatedly from Gaza. So this is how things like this proceed. I mean, the ultimate end of an ill-advised and insane, really, policy of believing that you can, your strategy should be the Chicken Little strategy and bury your head in the sand and pretend that if you can't see other people, then they don't see you or don't care about you. That leads to the slaughter of your women and children.
So what do you, just from Hamas's perspective, of course they're a proxy of Iran. The U.S. was in the midst of negotiations with Saudi Arabia following, the Abraham Accords during the Trump years. Strategically, what do you feel like Iran was thinking with respect to the timing of the attack on Saturday?
Well, they've been planning it for a long time, so I think that their ultimate objective at all times is to defeat Israel, is to weaken Israel, is to slaughter Jews. I mean, that's what they live to do. So they started planning this over, I think, 10 months ago, is what they were saying, and so they were planning a war against Israel. It's a combined war between by Iran's proxies in Gaza, Hamas, and Iran's proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah. And so that's what's happening now. And yeah, part of it, I'm sure, was because they rightly view normalization of Israeli-Saudi ties as a game changer that endangers them, which is why it's so important to both sides, and it's why so long as Israel wins, it's likely to happen. The timing specifically on October 7th, I think, was due to tactical considerations, which is that there was a dance festival right across the border from Gaza, where you had 2,000 young people who were unarmed, which is an extremely attractive and soft target, and they knew about it. And they planned their operation around it, so that they got, a lot of hostages from there, a lot of young women, a lot of pretty young women from there. And then they went after the kibbutzim as well, and they got the children and the families.
So do you feel like that, again, going back to the unity of purpose, have you gotten a sense, even internationally, that Iran is going to be in any way punished because of being the paymaster and helping with the planning and the operation? I mean, we've played on this program this week just how there are more commentators and politicians that are calling out Iran, but to this point, it seems like that's all that it is, just kind of saying that they're largely responsible. But here again, just like we said way back after 9/11, there was a unity of purpose for the United States at that time as well. But we said from the beginning it just was a little bit misguided because, again, if the number one state sponsor of terrorism gets through the retaliation unscathed, Are you really solving the problem?
No, I'm sorry. I keep trying to turn off my phone and it keeps clicking and saying I'm not allowing you to. So let me just get it to shut up. I just did a podcast about this. Actually, people can check it out on my website, carolynglick.com, and at jns.org, specifically addressing this very issue. But I'll just say that, the Biden administration hasn't changed its Iran policy. They're still denying the fact, even though the proof is overwhelming. I mean, it's right there. That Iran approved this, directed this, funded it, etc. And the Biden administration is still denying this. Senator Mike Lee posted a series of tweets on his Twitter page last night where he said that a number of senators had met with administration officials to talk about the situation in Israel, and that the sense that they received was that the administration was hiding a lot of vital information by claiming that it was highly sensitive or classified and they couldn't share it, but that the administration was trying to hide Iran's role in the operation, because in the war, because they want to maintain their pro-Iran policy. And then John Kirby, the National Security Council spokesperson, said, again, he refused to admit or that the administration is not going through with its plan to unfreeze $6 billion in funds that will be transferred to Iran from Qatar. And that's the thing, is that just last week, the administration approved the unfreezing of $6 billion to go to Iran as part of a hostage payment. And they're still planning on going through with it. So that indicates that, from as high as the White House, there's been a change. And also, President Biden gave a very emotional speech last night in support of Israel, but he never mentioned Iran once in that speech.
Yeah, we actually have a clip of Biden in that speech from yesterday. Go ahead and play clip 8.
My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. And when Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners.
They're urging, he says he's going to urge Congress to take or to fund these national security operations. But as he says this, as you noted there, he's unfreezing $6 billion. And of course, we played that clip. I think it was in part of a montage that we had yesterday. Where's the Kevin McCarthy one? This is clip 3.
3 years ago, there was not war in Europe or in Israel, but today there is. The United States must reinstate the maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Refreezing the $6 billion is only the start. But under the last administration, Iran was only producing 400,000 barrels of oil a day. Now it's 3 million. They're making billions of dollars. If you look at the foreign currency reserves, 3 years ago, Iran had 4 billion. Today it's 70 billion. They are wealthier, richer, and stronger under this Biden administration, and they're using that wealth to fund terrorism, attacking our allies and killing Americans, and it must stop today.
That, of course, is the former House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, talking about how this administration has enriched and empowered the Islamic Republic of Iran. All of this money, not just the $6 billion, but the oil wealth that's flowing into the country as of this moment. So again, it seems like the operation that Israel is unleashing, Israel needs partners. Do you feel like, with the current administration of the United States, do you feel like America is going to be a reliable partner, when you judge by the fruits or the actions, as opposed to, words of a speech like we heard yesterday?
We'll have to see. I'll tell you one thing. I mean, what Israel needs, America has historically left emergency stores of ammunition in Israel in bases that they keep here, and those emergency inventories of artillery rounds and other ammunition was all emptied out in January and moved to Ukraine. So Israel relies on the United States for several different things. We rely on the United States, that's for Iron Dome missiles, which are produced in the United States. We rely on the United States for artillery shells. We produce them here, but not at a high enough rate. And all of the bombs for our F-35s and other American fighter jets are American made. So those are things that we need a resupply of those. And because of the war in Ukraine, the United States is already low in its arsenals of those things, and its production is behind schedule. So we'll have to see how that goes, but that it's, the most fundamental thing that we need from the United States, aside from diplomatic support at places like the United Nations, where everybody's already rushing to, go back to the way things were and get to condemn Israel again. These are things that really are testament to American support. The one thing that President Biden said in that speech, that aside from the fact that he didn't mention Iran, that disturbed me, the first time I heard it, and then I heard it again, and it continued to disturb me, was that he made mention of, he said that I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu about our commitment to the laws of war. And the odd thing about that statement was, it was sort of, yes, so. I mean, they don't apply to terrorist organizations. They aren't, under international law, supposed to be afforded the rights of soldiers in regular armies. Certainly not. They're not. And the question then of civilian casualties and all the rest of it is, if this is something that Israel has to be concerned about after what happened, while they're holding our children and women hostages, is obscene. And it's an insult. And the last thing that I'll say on that is that the real burden for the humanitarian plight of Gaza has to fall on Egypt, because the place where, the civilians, people who care about the civilians of Gaza, should be putting all of the pressure on President Sisi in Egypt, so that he opens up the border with the Sinai Peninsula and allows people to flee there. But we're not going to allow resupply of food and water and electricity and medicine to Gaza when our soldiers were decapitated. We're not going to allow them to be resupplied in Gaza when they're holding on to our children and beating them in front of cameras. We're just that is an abridgment of our human rights, and we can't do that. This is a war of annihilation. They carried out an act of genocide against the Jewish people, of the kind of slaughter that we have not seen since the Holocaust on Saturday. And anybody who expects us to treat them with kid gloves after that, and by the way, while they were parading our women with blood dripping from between their legs down the streets in Gaza, the crowd was cheering them. The Hamas regime in Gaza is supported by the people of Gaza, and by the way, by the Palestinians in the West Bank as well. And so what is a civilian in this case? Right.
Maybe you could talk more about the borders. You listen to commentators over here, and a lot of people wouldn't even know that Gaza shares a border with Egypt, and that border, as you say, is completely closed. Like they're not receiving any refugees coming in from Gaza. Is that right?
That's what the Egyptians are saying, that they're patrolling the borders to block Gazans from fleeing to Egypt. Well, that has to end. Israel provided an enormous amount of help to the Egyptian military when they were fighting a war against ISIS forces in the Sinai Peninsula just a few years ago. And we expect the Egyptians to reciprocate that assistance now and allow the people of Gaza to leave to Egypt.
Regarding the border between Gaza and Israel, it's hard to. What do you think is the IDF's goal? Because I guess once the operation's done, it's hard to see it returning to the way that it was last week, where you get the fence back up and you've got all the technology to sort of make sure you can see if anyone is trying to cut through the barrier. What does Israel do after this latest chapter in Gaza?
Well, I was upset this afternoon when I was on Israeli television to learn that the security cabinet still hasn't figured out what has to be achieved, whether it's just to wipe out Hamas's military capabilities or also to wipe out its civilian capabilities. You have to understand this is a jihadist organization, so long as it continues to exist in any form, it exists in order to rebuild its strength to attack us again, so that it can't be allowed to survive Hamas in any sort of coherent form. And there are still voices in the cabinet who hadn't managed to figure that one out yet, but the Israeli people have figured it out. And the overwhelming demand of the public on all sides of the political spectrum, from places you would never expect, on the far left, are saying that the only goal of this war is the annihilation of Hamas, and I think that the government and the military will be forced to adopt that position as well, even just during the course of the battle. One of the things that a colleague of mine in Washington asked, really, I think it might have even still been on Saturday night, I don't remember, maybe on Sunday morning, whatever, at the very, very outset, was, well, what do we want from Gaza the day after? And I said, I think that the question itself is not as relevant as we'd like to believe it is, because we're in a place we've never been in before. So, the idea that what we know what the outcome has to be in terms of, we go back to we wanted this or we wanted that. I mean, first we have to see how the war develops. We have to annihilate this organization, and that's a big word, and it's a big task. And it's not just this organization. I mean, Hezbollah in Lebanon, as we speak, the northern Israel is under massive assault. There are air raid sirens going off all over northern Israel and down to the Gilboa area by Megiddo, which is 80 kilometers south of the Lebanese border. And they're saying that there may be penetrations of terrorists in two communities in northern Israel. And they've had everybody go into their houses and their shelters and lock all of their doors and windows. And so, and they're saying that there are unidentified aircraft, and that our aircraft are up in the sky looking for them to kill them, and terrorists on the ground. So, we're facing a two-front war in the north and in the south. Hezbollah has 250,000 rockets, mortars, and missiles, many of which are precision-guided, that are capable of hitting every point in Israel with a firepower that is equivalent to a nuclear bomb. And we have to wipe out that threat as well. I mean, and there's no choice. In Israel, we had 40 years of fighting over whether this war or that war is a war that we choose to be in or a war that we need to be in. There's no question in Israel that this is a war that we need to not only fight, but we need to win and reach a position at the end of it of unconditional surrender of our enemies.
Maybe you could comment, added to that, the left-wing media, of course, has been trying to destroy Benjamin Netanyahu. I mentioned how it was at least a little refreshing Saturday morning for me just to turn on CNN and to actually get some objectivity that we're not used to over here. Have you seen any discernible or noticeable change in how the left-wing media is approaching this story?
Well, it depends which. It also sometimes goes to the level of individual reporters, and there has been a shift on the reporting of by some of the people in the other stations. I'm a diplomatic correspondent at the Channel 14, which is sort of our Fox News, and all of the other stations are very far to the left. And so there's been some change in their coverage because, again, like I said, we reached the geological foundations of the Jewish soul on Saturday. That's how bad this was. And so from the most foundational level, we've reunified as a people, and I think reflecting that, some of that is reflected in the coverage, not in one paper, which is called Haaretz, which is also translated it into English, and they really have to stop referring to themselves as an Israeli paper and just refer to themselves as an anti-Israel paper. But they're worse than the New York Times, if you can imagine. But aside from that, my husband's watching the coverage more on other stations than I am. I usually just can't stand it. But he says that there has been a marked improvement, although they have been publishing some Hamas propaganda. They had on one station the other day somebody saying, "Oh yeah, when the Hamas terrorists came into my house and they were very complimentary of my food." I mean, it was like this bizarro world video that might have just been produced by Hamas itself. So they put on some horrible things, but by and large, we're seeing a shift.
Do you feel like there's also more unity in the Knesset as well?
Look, I mean, I think that it's never been more clear. We had it in 1973 in the Yom Kippur War, and we have it now, which is that the public has much more unity, is much more unified, and has much deeper resolve than is reflected in our elites, whether they're in the IDF general staff or in the political echelon or in the media. I mean, the media, it's long been said that the Israeli media is essentially a psychological warfare operation against the people of Israel. But news consumers themselves never buy it, which is why, their candidates almost never get elected. So, I think that we're seeing that same thing reflected now, that the people are much more resolute and much more unified still than our media would like us to be. And then, a lot of our politicians, particularly on the left, think is required. But and so I think that at the end of the day, as they recognize this resolve and unanimity of purpose, they follow the people of Israel, because that the people of Israel are the strongest resource that Israel has. We're the strongest arm of the Jewish people, stronger than our elected leaders, stronger than our military commanders, obviously stronger than our journalists and all the rest of it.
Do you, and I guess it's kind of obvious in one sense, but do you feel like that the country, Israel, is bracing itself for quite a few more casualties a ground invasion, I'm sure is not going to, be easy. But you feel like the resolve is there among the Israeli populace to get behind the effort, even if it leads to the death of more Israelis?
Yeah.
You're a journalist, you're an Israeli, you've been there, as you said, 34 years, I guess it was. What do you feel like for your part? I mean, what's coming away from this horrific attack on Shabbat just a few days ago, what do you feel like is the main message that you want to get out to your followers and to those that, view your podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people abroad, I think have been in the West. We've seen a sliding collapse or slide towards collapse of the Western world because in large part of sort of this indoctrination of self-hatred that blames the Western democracies for all of the ills that plague it, and that somehow or another the United States is a terrible, evil country, which is, of course, a complete lie. And a lot of projection of the crimes of enemies of freedom onto the free world. And we've seen that coming out of academia and other areas in the United States in particular. And part of that has led to deep-seated uneasiness at the making a distinction between good and evil, and being able to identify evil when you see it and call it out for what it is and stand with good. And, we're commanded by God to choose between life and death, and to choose life. And I think that everybody who chooses life, because again, what is Hamas? It's a death cult. When you see women handing out candies in the streets because their sons died killing Jews, then you understand that you're dealing with an evil society, and it's something that we all have to be repulsed by, and that we all have to be united in confronting and defeating. And I'll just say a last thing on that, and I spoke about this on my show yesterday, which is that, one of the things that I found when I finally noticed it really extraordinary is the outpouring of support for Hamas that we've seen in the West. You've had 40 in the 36 hours after the attack on Saturday, you had 40 separate protests on behalf of Hamas throughout the United States, including in Times Square, where you had several thousand people, and outside the White House. And the emboldened sense that these jihadists, that these communist revolutionaries have in the face of the slaughter of Jews, these people who claim to be progressives, Jake Tapper spoke to that in the clip that you played, but it shows that they are emboldened, and they're emboldened not just by the depravity of Hamas and its success in killing so many Jews in such a slaughter on Saturday. They're also emboldened by the meekness of the West, that the societies that they live inside of are not standing up to them and punishing them and turning them into pariahs, if not jailing them for their support, their material support for terrorism and their efforts to terrorize the people who live in their societies, Americans, Australians, British, French, and so on and so forth. So, I think that by standing up for Israel and standing up for good against evil, and for calling out the universities that enable this, I saw Harvard, Columbia, NYU, University of Chicago, all of them, universities across the United States are doing apologetics for Hamas. Student organizations on every campus practically in America are defending Hamas and attacking the Jews. This is a danger to every society. And so standing up with Israel today is also a way to stand up for Western civilization and to defend your societies against the scourge of jihad, which has been embedded inside of America. It has been embedded inside of Europe and throughout the Western world.
Yeah, thank you so much for those insights. Very powerful. If I can squeeze in one more question, this is kind of shifting gears a little bit, but tell us a little bit about the just the security failure. I think some commentators over here were really just shocked by, I guess, the presence of the Israeli military down in the south near Gaza, and how 1,000 terrorists were able to come across the border and then, I guess, roam for hours on that rampage How are they able to do that? And what kind of, I mean, I know there were soldiers, obviously, that were murdered as well. But how come they had that much, I guess, leeway to get in, to go to the kibbutzim, to murder all these people, to take hostages back? Where was the IDF?
Well, it works out that the entire senior echelons of Israel's intelligence directorate were on a vacation together in Eilat. And a lot of the systems that we thought we had weren't operational. So, for instance, Israel developed we have a system that's supposed to detect and shoot at anything that comes close to the Gaza border. And what the Gazans were able to do was blow it up with attack drones and bombs that they threw off of paragliders. And we have a system to defend the detect and kill sensors, and it wasn't installed. And so this is an operational and intelligence failure of epic proportions, and it raises a lot of questions about the general staff of the IDF. And a lot of the generals who are responsible for this haven't appeared in public, including the head of the intelligence directorate. And a lot of people, most people want to maintain unity, and we want to support the IDF, and we want to back up our generals so that they do what needs to be done. But there's as we start learning more about what happened, there's a growing groundswell demanding that the people who brought us to this point through their failures be replaced right now, because it's hard to see how the people who enabled this to happen through their failures, their professional failures, can possibly win the war. But that's a decision that hasn't been made to the best of my knowledge. And perhaps now that we're forming this national unity or national emergency government, perhaps some decisions will be made. I'm a little bit concerned that some of these people haven't been replaced yet, but I don't know. I mean, it's a conversation that people are afraid to have. But I said on television today, and people were a little bit worried about hearing it. I said, look, we have to ask the question, and we have to have an answer to it. Without, it's talking about what happened or how it happened, we have to ask the question whether the people who were in charge on Saturday can be in charge today. And that's a serious question that has to be answered. And, I didn't want to be the person asking it, but nobody else was, so I figured somebody had to.
Well, we certainly appreciate you addressing it on this show. We have been discussing this horrific attack on Saturday morning in Israel. We've been discussing all of that and more with Israeli journalist Carolyn Glick. We gave you some of her contact info, or at least where you can go to hear more from her. She's the senior editor at Jewish News Syndicate, and she also hosts the Carolyn Glick Show. I believe your Twitter handle is at Carolyn Glick. Any other contact or information that you can pass along to our viewers?
You can also follow me on my website, carolynglick.com, and Twitter, like you said. I post my stuff on Facebook most of the time as well, and Telegram. So I'm on the web. Just follow me.
Carolyn Glick, we thank you for joining us on the Trumpet Daily.
Thank you, and God bless you for your support of Israel.